Hi everyone, my name is Talia and welcome to HustleSZN. In today's video we're going to be doing the mid-year book freakout tag. Just before I get started though, I quickly wanted to talk about the Black Lives Matter movement. I haven't made a video since that has happened yet on booktube, and I've seen so many people add their support to the community, and I just wanted to do that briefly on my channel as well. So I know that a lot of people have found links that you can donate to, a lot of people have found organizations that you can donate to, but they're mostly centered around the States. So I tried to look for a few that were a bit more local to me. So I found two in Toronto that I really liked, and then one of them is, I'm pretty sure it was Black Women in Motion. I'll link it down below. It's like empowerment, leadership, education, career advice basically for Black women. There was another one, I forget the name, but I'll put it down, but it was basically they target social determinants of health in the Black community, which I thought was really cool. They had like a 12-week program that aims to help them lose weight, things like that. It sounded pretty cool, so I'll link the two of those down below. And I also quickly wanted to shout out a few of my favorite Black booktubers, because why not? So the first one that I ever found actually was Diana in Color. So I think what originally drew me to her channel was that it was like the aesthetic, or I should say like the palette back then was yellow, and if you don't know, yellow is my favorite color, hence the bookshelves. So I'll put her channel, and it was also through her channel that I heard about, there was a readathon that I think was called POC-a-thon, or POC Readathon, and at that time it was a bit eye-opening because I'd never heard of a readathon that really just read books by non-white authors. So that was kind of my first experience seeing that there are people on YouTube who focus more on diverse reads, and obviously since then I've learned that there are a ton, you just have to go looking for them. So I'll leave her channel down below. Olivias Catastrophe is another one. If you want like the sweetest messages on your videos, then become her friend, talk to her, leave her notes on her videos. They're super thoughtful comments all the time, so I'll leave that channel down below as well. Another one that I really liked was Mina Reads, and they recently had a video that was like 9 different paranormal romances. I can't remember the exact number. It was a semi-recent video. It was super fun, so I'll leave that down below. And then one actually that I've found, actually I can't remember the name, but I found one channel since this whole Black Lives Matter movement happened and like people have been subscribing to Black booktubers. Also I've been like watching videos on the Black experience on booktube. So she's like a librarian, she has a kid. Give me 1 second. But I've been loving her content. Okay, so Bookish Realm. So check Bookish Realm out. Yeah, I mean I've been watching Little Wolf as well from before. So if you're more into like aesthetic stuff and like BTS, then you should definitely give her channel a follow. But anyways, if you are interested in that type of stuff, I think they've created a bunch of different playlists, which if I find, I will link down below, that basically just like highlight Black content creators in our community. So I will leave those down below. And then finally, I just also wanted to quickly talk about like my own 2 goals moving forward. So obviously this whole movement got me to reflect a bit on like my own reading taste, not just my reading taste, but like in life in general. But with regards to reading, I thought about how earlier this year I wasn't reading that much, and strangely enough, like I had this period where I was a bit stressed out, but it was all pre-corona, and I wasn't really reading. And this year I had made the goal to just like not make any TBRs or not make any lists, and literally just whatever I felt like reading, go for that. A lot of like my comfort reads ended up being white authors, and I realized it was kind of weird that like my comfort reads were from these white authors. I guess it was unfortunate to realize that if you ever want to be reading more diversely, or if you ever want to consume more diverse content, it's like you always need to take one extra step, because that won't be the first thing that's offered to you. I have been reading more POC authors, not necessarily more Black authors, at least since last year when I decided I want to diversify my reading. And I had been reading a bit more queer authors, but again, like mostly, I read like one non-binary author, but otherwise mostly it had just been like male-male romances. I guess what I'm saying is that one of my own personal goals is to reach for more Black authors and to put in that extra effort and to not be lazy, because in a weird way this year I wanted it to be less stressful, but I don't want to be lazy, and I don't want to just read one type of author, and I want to go looking for these other authors. I mean, I'm lucky now with the Black Lives Matter movement that it'll probably be even easier to find these diverse authors, so I'm not worried about my ability to find more diverse reads, but I just wanted to put it out there so that I actually do it. The other thing, which is less to do with books but more in like my own personal career type thing, is because of this whole movement, I've watched 13th, which is oh my god, what are they called? A documentary on Netflix that's all about the like imprisonment system and all the different like political moves that were made in America that basically targeted Black people and allowed for easier incarceration of Black people. Actually, if you don't want to watch the documentary, my brother has told me that if you just read Angela Davis's book, which is fairly short and free online, she covers all of these topics anyways. But reading that was super interesting, and I learned a lot about, I guess, systemic stuff that would make you more prone to being incarcerated. And the reason that I bring this up is because at my work, like, we care for patients who are inmates, and it got me to reflect, I guess, on how I treat those patients, and how even before I enter the patient room, like, I already have so many thoughts going through my head, and my personal goal moving forward is to just be more open-minded when I go to treat these patients. Like, already, I mean, how I treat them usually is supposed to be equal, and like they get the same medical treatment, I guess. It's more like how I feel and what thoughts I have before I go in. And so a personal goal that I've made since then is to just be a bit more open-minded and to like take a second and try to check whatever prejudices I have at the door. One of the main themes that was in the documentary was how, as a society, we say that like when these people make a mistake, that we forever hold them accountable for it, as opposed to like forgiving them and letting them continue with their life, because they'll forever have this criminal record that follows them. I don't know, it just got me thinking. Okay, so with all of that out of the way, let's just get right into the video. Question number 1, best book you've read so far. Fuck, I should have opened Goodreads sooner. Let me just go to my books. I still think Like a Love Story. I've spoken about this already a few times on my channel, but I feel like this is the one that I connected with the most. This is the one I loved the most. This was the one that surprised me the most. This was the one that did a lot of things. The atmosphere, the Madonna, the history, all that combined together. It was just so fun. And it was written by a Persian, you know? So like, if you don't already know, it's basically, actually, screw it. I don't want to give synopsises. You can look it up. It's a really good book. I actually have a whole video on why you should read it, so I won't bother to explain what it's about, but just that I really loved it, and it was probably the best book I've read so far this year. Okay, question number 2. Best sequel you've read so far in 2019. What? It's 2020. Damn. Okay, best sequel you've read so far in 2020. I've actually read a few different sequels. I was reading a series with Isabel, the 7 Realms series. I have been reading or continuing Keeper of the Lost Cities, but the sequel that I loved the most was actually the 3rd book in a trilogy, and I think it was called All the King's Men. It's just called The King's Men by Nora Sakovic, and there is a name for this series, but I'm completely blanking on it. So like there's this sport called Exie, which is like kind of like lacrosse meets football maybe. And there's this one team where the coach basically takes like troubled teens and lets them come play the game, and they used to be the shittiest team in the league, but like they're trying to revamp themselves. Anyways, it's just a bunch of like delinquents who don't really have a family, or I guess they have shitty personal lives outside of the sport, and they all come together and they all come with their like baggage and their problems, and they just kind of work through it and try to become a team. It's like sort of Mighty Ducks vibes, but like darker, and there is a kind of slow burn romance that happens throughout the series that really culminates in the 3rd book, and I was just here for it. I was obsessed with it. It's so good. It actually makes me want to reread the entire series, because I just like, I want to see again how it happened, because it was so slow that you don't really even see it happen. Yeah, it was so good. The thing about the series is when you read the 1st book, it's not, I guess the 1st book is so slow and like it's just putting the pieces together, but when you finish it, you are sort of curious, and you know, you will continue, but like you don't really know why. But then you get to the 3rd book and suddenly it's just like everything, like you love everybody. You love all the relationships that are happening, and I don't know, it was so well done. It's like such an insidious way for the author to like get under your skin and make you love these characters who, when you were initially reading, you were just like, I can hardly remember, like, or I can hardly tell your names apart, but it's just really good. Trigger warnings, because there's a lot of like abuse that happens in general, so if you have any triggers, go look them up. They are probably in this series, but If not, it is so good and highly recommend. Also, if you are like young and fangirly-ish, I recommend it even more because as an adult, I felt like there were certain parts that were just way too angsty for me, and there were parts where I was like, oh my god, if I was 14, I would be eating this shit up alive. Is that? I would be eating this shit up. I don't know. I would be devouring it and I'd be enjoying it, but slightly older, I was kind of like, damn, this is really dramatic. I don't know if I have the emotional reserve right now for this, but it was so good. I highly recommend it. Anyways, I should move on. Next question. New release you haven't read yet but want to. I mean, I've been seeing You Should See Me in a Crown everywhere, and I do want to read it. All Boys Aren't Blue is another one that I want to read. And then Marie Rukowski had a book that came out this year, Midnight Lie or something like that, which I initially wanted to read. I don't know now. I'm like so-so. If you don't know, the Winners trilogy, the first 2 books are some of my favorite books ever. The 3rd book was a huge disappointment, so I don't know if I want to give her another chance yet or not. Number 5, biggest disappointment. Ooh. Okay, I think I'm going to go with The Arrangement by Robin Harding. So this is a book that I heard about on, I feel like her channel is Katie's Book Nook or Kate's Book Nook or something like that. I'll link the video down below, but she talked about this book a lot and made it sound like really interesting, and I think the topic in and of itself I felt was super interesting. It was all about like sugar babies and sugar daddies and that whole culture. Okay, first of all, the first half is like one story and then the second half becomes a completely different story. But then second of all, it was like not very progressive. There were times where the message that it was sending seemed misogynistic. I just feel like that's already the common perception of most sex workers. I guess I just thought it would explore different perspectives, or at least like give me a few different perspectives, you know? But I just felt like at the end of the day, it never was in favor of the sugar babies. Me and my friends, we discussed it, and I don't know if the author was trying to show that in the end, as the more vulnerable person, I guess, you don't really ever win, or maybe like she was trying to say the system always beats you, but I didn't like it. And mostly because I felt like it had misogynistic undertones, and I just wasn't here for that. It's 2020, and like sex work is legit work. So unless you're gonna like give me some cool, fresh, new perspective, I really don't want to be reading your book on like why these women should go to hell, you know? So that was that. Okay, what's the next question? 6 is biggest surprise of the year. I feel like a Love Story was my biggest surprise, but for the sake of not answering the same question, or sorry, not answering a different question with the same book, I don't know. I mean, I read Orange, both volumes, and lately manga has been disappointing me, so I guess I could say it was a surprise that I actually enjoyed it as much as most people said, and that I really liked the story, especially because I didn't love Dream and Sun, you know, and I read that one first, and I'm pretty sure it's by the same person. Number 7 is a favorite new author, debut or new to you. I guess for this one I can go with Fonda Lee. I recently read Jade City because another booktuber, Isabel, told me to, and it was amazing, and I'm waiting for the sequel to come in from the library so I can read that as well. And I thought her writing was so good. Again, so this book is like, imagine The Godfather, but it has to do more with like kung fu and Jade helps you have magical powers. I'm doing a horrible job of explaining it, but it's kind of like a family drama thing as they like manage their empire. Look it up for a better synopsis, but I want to say that I really liked her writing because I just felt like she was so good at, in like a single scene with not much happening, somehow there were so many layers of like you understanding all the different relationships that were happening in the room, and you understanding how much history was behind each of those people like knowing each other. Anyways, and I'm always looking for like cool female fantasy authors, so I'm gonna add her, and if you have any other recommendations, please let me know. Newest fictional crush. Again, recently when I was reading Gods of Jade and Shadow with Isabel, we were discussing how, at least, well, I brought it up and she agrees. One of the characters, Hunkame, is like the Mayan god of death, and I mean, I'm not like obsessed with him, but I feel like his presence and his aura, and if they made it into a movie or a live action, I would be on board with him and his aesthetic. Yeah, I don't know if it's just like a product of being born in the 90s when like grunge and like death was in, but I'm into that aesthetic, and call me a sinner, send me to hell. It is what it is, you know? Newest favorite character. No one actually stands out to me that much, but there is a side character in We Hunt the Flame named Altair, and if you've read Cinder, he's like the equivalent of, it's not Thor, is it Thorn? You know that one side character who's like extremely arrogant but like lovable and funny and makes all the banter and like picks up on everybody else's sexual tension? That's Altair. And he's a bit of an archetype because I feel like I've seen him in other series, and there's always that one character who's like that, and that's him. He was pretty cool. And then the main character in The Black Flamingo, Mikey, his name's Michael. The main character in The Black Flamingo, Michael, is also a bit of a cinnamon bun, so if you're more into like cinnamon buns, he's also a cool character. Yeah, no one really stands out to me, but that's 2. I think that counts. Okay, number 10, book that made you cry. Most recently, probably We Hunt the Flame. I want to say I cried. I don't think I cried a lot, but there was one scene that definitely got me emotional. She's really good at like evoking emotion if you decide to read that book. Number 11, book that made you happy. I think The Black Flamingo made me very happy. Again, I'm probably going to talk about this book in an upcoming video, but The Black Flamingo, I loved it. It was great. You should read it. If you're a sucker like me for books written in verse, this is a book for you. It's not like the most, like if you're looking for some kind of in-depth look at what it's like to be gay and to do drag, it's not your book. But if you just want like a fun story about a kid coming to terms with his identity and like learning to express himself, 100% you should read this book. I loved it. I felt like all the characters are so real. Everything about it is so relatable. 100% go read that book. It's such a feel-good type of read. I think you'll love it. 12, most beautiful book you've bought so far this year or received. Like a Love Story was the only book I bought, but I did receive a beautiful book, On a Sunbeam by Tilly Walden, which is this really cool graphic novel that my friend Andrew got for my birthday, which I'm very excited to read. It's like, it says it's a slow burn romance and a found family space opera adventure. So very excited for that. I'm kind of saving it for like a one-day type read, and I think it features a female-female romance, but I will have to get back to you on that. But yeah, this is the prettiest book that I have received this year. And with that, I think we finally make it to our last question, which is what books do you need to read by the end of the year? True. I honestly have not been keeping up on what books are coming out towards the end of the year or at all, because like I said, this year was supposed to be stress-free, and it was supposed to be like pick up and read whatever you want, don't actually look at what's coming out, and don't make any plans and don't make any commitments. But that being said, I know that the author of Darius the Great is Not Okay is putting out a second one called Darius the Great Deserves Better. I think that's what it's called, and that's coming out in August. I 100% want to go support that and read that. I know that Sabaa Tahir's book is coming out this year, the 4th in a number of the Ashes series, which I'm very excited to read. I feel like those are it. Again, because of this whole like Black Lives Matter thing, I have been watching a lot of recommendations for like books by Black authors, and so I am excited to read one called Grown, and at some point I will probably want to read Take a Hint, Dani Brown by Talia Hibbert. So I guess I could add those 2 to the list, but I'm trying not to like think too much about books coming out, so I'm gonna leave you with those 4 options. Sweet, that is the end of this tag. I hope you had fun watching. I hope you keep reading. I hope you're having a good time. I hope you're enjoying whatever it is you're doing right now, quarantine, work, etc., protesting, whatever it is, and I will see you next time. Bye!